They turned her away at the front desk of the most prestigious hotel in the city, and not one person in that lobby said a word. Adjoa Owusu had walked through the revolving door of the Abara Grand, carrying nothing but a worn canvas bag and the quiet dignity of a woman who had learned long ago that she did not need to announce herself to be worthy of a room. She was 41 years old, broad-shouldered, with close-cropped hair going silver at the temples and hands that told the story of every year she had lived. She wore a navy dress that had been washed so many times the color had softened to something closer to gray. Her sandals were old but clean. She did not look like the kind of woman who belonged in a hotel where the flower arrangements alone cost more than a week's groceries. But she had a reservation. She had made it 3 weeks ago, paid the deposit from the money she had saved carefully over 4 months. The money she had set aside from her cleaning work, from the weekends. She spent scrubbing other people's floors and folding other people's linen from the birthday gift her sister in Accra had sent her, because she knew Adjoa never spent money on herself. It was one night. Just one night in a real hotel, in a real bed with a real bath, because her daughter was getting married in the morning, and Adjoa had promised herself that for once, just once, she would not arrive tired. She stepped up to the reception desk and set her canvas bag down on the marble floor beside her feet. The young man behind the desk looked up. His name tag said Brendan. He was perhaps 25, with a neat tie and the kind of practiced smile that does not reach the eyes. He looked at Adjoa the way people look at something that does not quite belong where they find it. "Can I help you?" he said, though his voice said something different entirely. "Yes," Adjoa said. "I have a reservation. Owusu, Adjoa Owusu. Check in for tonight." Brendan typed something slowly. He looked at the screen, then he looked back at her. "I'm not finding anything under that name." Adjoa did not flinch. She had been looked at like this before. She reached into her canvas bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The confirmation email she had printed at the library 3 weeks ago, because she did not own a printer, and she did not trust things that only existed on a screen. "Here," she said. "Confirmation number is right there at the top." Brendan took the paper. He held it the way you hold something you are not really reading. Then he set it on the counter and slid it back to her. "Our system is showing that reservation as canceled." Adjoa looked at him steadily. "I did not cancel it. Ma'am, the system." "I did not cancel it," she said again quietly. "I have the confirmation number. I paid the deposit. I have the email. What I do not have is a reason why my reservation would be canceled without my knowledge or my consent." A woman standing behind Adjoa in line shifted her weight. A couple near the elevators glanced over. Nobody moved. Nobody said anything. Brendan looked uncomfortable in the way that people look uncomfortable when they know they are doing something wrong, but have decided to keep doing it anyway. "I can check with my manager," he said, in a tone that suggested he would not be in a hurry about it. "Please do," Adjoa said. He picked up the phone at the desk. He spoke quietly into it, his back half turned to her. Adjoa stood straight. She did not tap her fingers. She did not look around the lobby self-consciously. She simply waited, the way a woman waits when she has learned that waiting is sometimes the only power she has. The manager who came out was a young woman named Courtney, who wore her authority like a blazer that was slightly too large for her. She had the look of someone who had been told Adjoa was the problem before she even walked through the door. "Mrs. Owusu," Courtney said, with the smooth condescension of someone who has been trained to be polite while being dismissive, "I've reviewed your reservation, and I'm afraid there was an irregularity with your payment that flagged the booking for cancellation." "What irregularity?" Adjoa asked. "I'm not able to discuss the specifics of—" "What irregularity?" Adjoa said again. Not louder, just slower and more certain. Courtney glanced at Brendan. Brendan looked at the desk. Our system flagged the card, Courtney said. Unfortunately, we were unable to verify. The deposit cleared, Adjoa said. I have my bank statement. Would you like to see it? Ma'am, I understand this is frustrating. I would like a room, Adjoa said. The room I reserved and paid for. My daughter is getting married tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, and the church is 4 blocks from this hotel, and I have been on my feet since 5 o'clock this morning, and I have not eaten since noon. I am not here to cause trouble. I am here because I made a reservation. I paid for it, and I would like what I paid for. The lobby had gotten quiet. Not completely. There was still the soft piano music from somewhere overhead, the distant sound of wheels on marble. But the people nearby had stopped pretending not to listen. Courtney straightened. I'm afraid we're fully booked this evening. Even if we could resolve the payment irregularity, we wouldn't be able to accommodate. You are not fully booked, Adjoa said simply. I can see from here that the room key wall behind your colleague has more than a dozen keys hanging on it. A beat of silence. The system, Courtney. Adjoa said her name with the same weight she would give to any word that needed to be said carefully. I am going to ask you one more time to help me, not as a favor, as a basic courtesy that every person who walks through that door deserves. And that was when the elevator opened. The man who stepped out was tall, somewhere in his late 60s, with close-cut gray hair and the unhurried movement of someone who has long since stopped needing to prove anything. He wore a dark suit, no tie, and carried nothing but his phone. He was scanning something on the screen as he walked, but he looked up when the quality of the lobby's silence reached him, because some men have lived long enough to know what that particular silence means. His name was Kwabena Asante Forjur, and he had built the Abaragran with his own money 22 years ago, when people told him that a luxury hotel owned by a Ghanaian man in this city would never survive its first winter. He crossed the lobby in 12 steps. Good evening, he said, looking at Adjoa first, then at Courtney. Courtney turned and the color changed in her face. Mr. Asante Forjur, she said. I was just. I heard, he said. He had not heard everything. He had heard enough. He turned to Adjoa and looked at her the way people look at someone they are actually seeing. My name is Kwabena, he said. I own this hotel. I'm sorry you are standing here having this conversation. May I see your confirmation? Adjoa handed him the paper. He read it properly. All of it, top to bottom, the way a person reads something when they intend to understand it rather than dismiss it. Then he folded it once and handed it back to her. Courtney, he said, without looking away from Adjoa, please pull up Mrs. Owusu's reservation. Sir, the system flagged. Courtney. She went to the desk. Kwabena looked back at Adjoa. Your daughter's wedding is tomorrow? At 9, Adjoa said. St. Augustine's 4 blocks, something moved across his face. My wife and I were married at St. Augustine's, he said. 38 years ago. Adjoa looked at him. Then you know it is a good church, she said. He smiled. It was the first real smile that had happened in the lobby in some time. It is a very good church. Behind them, Courtney was typing. The sound of keys was the only thing in the room besides the piano. Now, before I go any further, I want to say something to you. Yes, you, watching this right now. Because what happened next is the part that stays with me. Not the grand gesture, the small one, the one that happened before anyone was watching. Because what Kwabena did next was not dramatic. He did not make a speech. He did not call Courtney out in front of the whole lobby. He did not need to humiliate anyone to do what was right. He simply turned to Brendan and said, quietly enough that only the 3 of them could hear, when a guest comes to this desk with a printed confirmation and a paid deposit, they are a guest. That is the only system that matters. Do you understand me? Brendan said, yes, sir. And then Kwabena turned back to Adjoa and said, I would like to offer you an upgrade, if you'll accept it. The suite on the 14th floor has a view of the water and a bathtub large enough to forget your troubles in for an hour. I think you've earned it. Adjoa looked at him for a long moment. There was a version of herself that wanted to refuse. The version that had spent so long being told she was too much trouble that she had learned to take up less space, ask for less, expect less. The version that was tired of rooms that made her feel like she had wandered into the wrong building. But her daughter was getting married in the morning, and the woman who had raised her daughter to stand up straight and accept what she deserved was not going to stand in the lobby of a hotel and refuse a kindness because she was not used to being offered one. I'll accept, she said. Thank you. Kwabena nodded. The restaurant on the second floor is still serving dinner. Please order whatever you like. It's on the house. That is very generous, Adjoa said. But I'll pay for my meal. He looked at her for a moment. Then he nodded again, and this time there was something different in it. Something that looked less like surprise and more like recognition. As you wish, he said. Courtney handed the key card across the desk without looking up. Adjoa picked up her canvas bag. She straightened her dress. She thanked Kwabena, not with the excessive gratitude of someone who is relieved to have been permitted to exist, but with the simple sincerity of a woman who means what she says. Then she walked toward the elevator. The couple near the doors stepped aside. An older gentleman near the concierge desk, who had watched the whole thing from behind his newspaper, lowered the paper and gave Adjoa a small nod as she passed. She nodded back. The elevator doors closed. On the 14th floor, the room was everything Kwabena had said it was. The water was visible from the window, dark and wide and silver under the city lights. The bed had 7 pillows, which struck Adjoa as both excessive and wonderful. The bathtub was freestanding, white, and large enough that when she filled it with hot water and lowered herself into it, she laughed. A short, quiet, involuntary sound, because it had been so long since she had laughed like that, surprised by comfort. She had brought a small bottle of lavender oil in her canvas bag. She dropped 5 drops in the water. She lay back and looked at the ceiling and thought about her daughter. Her daughter's name was Adjoa Owusu. No, wait. Let me be honest with you. Her daughter's name was Theodora, but Adjoa had called her Teddy since she was 3 years old and fell down a staircase and got back up before Adjoa could even reach her, brushed off her knees, and said very seriously, I'm fine, Mama, I'm fine. And Adjoa had thought then, this child is going to be all right, whatever happens. This one is going to be all right. She had been right. Teddy was 23 now. She had graduated with a nursing degree the same year Adjoa's husband, Teddy's father, had died of a stroke in his sleep. The way a man can die quietly enough that you don't know until morning, and then you know for the rest of your life. That had been 4 years ago. Adjoa had kept working. Teddy had kept going. They had held each other up, the way women in their family had always held each other up, which is to say, without making a fuss about it, because making a fuss does not get the laundry done. Teddy was marrying a young man named Prosper Dacqua, who was a secondary school teacher, and who had asked Adjoa's permission before he proposed. He had sat across from her at her kitchen table, which was a small table in a small kitchen in an apartment that Adjoa had kept spotlessly clean since 1997, and he had said, Mrs. Owusu, I want to marry your daughter. I want to take care of her. And Adjoa had looked at him for a long time before she said, Prosper, my daughter does not need to be taken care of. She needs to be loved and respected and given room to be herself. Can you do that? And Prosper had said, without hesitating, Yes, ma'am, that's what I meant. And Adjoa had decided then that she liked him very much. She lay in the bathtub until the water cooled. Then she got out, dried off with a towel that was softer than anything she owned, and sat on the edge of the bed and ate the dinner she had ordered from the restaurant. Grilled fish and rice, and a small green salad, and a glass of ginger beer, and she watched the water out the window, and she let herself, for one evening, feel like a woman who was allowed to rest. She called Teddy at 8:30. "Mama," Teddy said immediately, "are you at the hotel? How is it? Are they treating you right?" "They are treating me very well," Adjoa said. And then, because Teddy always knew when there was a story, she told her. All of it. Brendan and Courtney in the lobby and Kwabena Asante Forjur and the suite on the 14th floor and the bathtub and the 7 pillows. When she finished, there was a pause. "Mama," Teddy said. You paid for your own dinner anyway, didn't you?" Adjoa smiled at the window. "Of course," Teddy laughed, the same laugh Adjoa had given her, low and involuntary, and surprised by something good. "I love you," she said. "I love you too, my daughter. Sleep, you have somewhere to be in the morning." She hung up. She folded back the duvet. She lay down in the center of the bed, which was large enough that she spread her arms slightly to each side just to feel the width of it. She was asleep in 4 minutes. She had not slept that well in 4 years. In the morning she was up at 6. She showered, dressed, pinned the small silk flowers she had bought at the market onto the lapel of the jacket she had pressed 3 times this week to get the crease exactly right. She packed her canvas bag. She made the bed, old habit, and left the room neat. At the front desk, Brendan was not there. A different clerk checked her out. But as Adjoa was turning toward the door with her receipt folded into her bag, she heard someone say her name. She turned. Kwabena Asante Forjur was crossing the lobby again, this time with a takeaway coffee cup in each hand. He held one out to her. "For the walk to the church," he said. Adjoa looked at the cup, then at him. "You remembered," she said. 4 blocks, he said. "In those shoes in October, you'll want something warm." She took the cup. "Thank you," she said. "And then I hope your business does well, Mr. Asante Forjur." "I mean that sincerely, Kwabena," he said. "Kwabena," she said. He smiled. "Give my congratulations to the couple." She walked out into the October morning, coffee in hand, canvas bag on her shoulder, silk flower pinned at her lapel. 4 blocks between her and the church where her daughter was going to stand at the front in white and promise her life to a good man. The air was cold and bright and smelled like the city right after rain. Adjoa Owusu walked like a woman who knew exactly where she was going. Which she did. She always had. Now I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, what about Courtney? What about Brendan? What happened to them? Here is what I will tell you. I do not know the end of their stories. That is not my business, and it is not the point. The point is this. Adjoa did not walk into that hotel looking for trouble. She did not leave it looking for revenge. She walked in with a confirmation number and a canvas bag and the quiet confidence of a woman who knew her own worth, even when the room was telling her otherwise, and she walked out the same way. That is not a small thing. That is, in fact, the whole thing. Because the world will tell you, especially if you are a certain kind of woman, in a certain kind of dress, carrying a certain kind of bag, that you do not belong in the room. It will tell you this loudly sometimes. It will tell you this politely, which is worse. It will tell you with a glance and a keyboard click, and a smile that does not reach the eyes. And what you do in that moment matters. Not because anyone is watching, but because you are. Adjoa knew that. Her daughter knows that now. And I hope, if you are watching this on a day when someone has made you feel like you are standing in the wrong lobby, I hope you know it too. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Ancient African Folktales. We tell these stories because they matter. because they are us. Because they have always been us. We'll see you in the next one.